Welcome back. Welcome back. It's your boy Tommy D. I am actually really out of breath today. The show is Philanthropy and Focus. And as you know, I have to walk up 2 flights from the kitchen to get to the attic, just below the roof of the house. And I'm not usually really out of breath, but there's people home and there's a dog down there and there's all that because it's President's Week and it's a holiday week and all this kind of stuff. So I'm not even acting. I'm literally out of breath because the dog Cheeto wanted to go outside. I didn't have the time to do it. So I handed him to one of my sons. And now we're here every single week for not exactly in a row, but this is the 199th episode. Every Friday morning, I come up to the attic and I have this opportunity and honor to meet with a leader of a nonprofit organization to help them tell their story and amplify their message. Saeeda Dunston, CEO of Elmcor, is here. Good morning, Saeeda. How are you?
Good morning, Tommy. Catch your breath.
I'm
Um,
I'm seriously out of breath. I'm not even kidding. I'm not even playing games, man.
Catch your breath. And congratulations on 199 episodes. Really, truly an accomplishment. I look forward to hearing the 200th episode. I'm sure it will be a blast.
Yes.
Good morning, everyone out there listening. Saeeda Dunston, CEO of Elmcor Youth and Adult Activities. We are the oldest Black-founded, Black-led nonprofit in Queens. We are 60 years this year. Super excited, and thank you for having us, Tommy.
I'm thrilled to have you, and I know it's your 60th anniversary. I mean, it's funny. Like I saw something on there that on the website this morning, and it said something about 1981, and I go, wait, 19, and it wasn't referring to the founding; it was referring to something else. I go, wait a second, I was born in '78. I'm only 47, so 81 doesn't make 60. And then I had to go back, and I saw 1965 and things like that. What we do on this show is you and I have talked about, but some folks who may have found the program for the first time, for the last 198 episodes, every week it's a leader of a nonprofit gang. They come on the show. We talk about their background, their journey. We talk about the organization that they lead, the programs of that organization, the impact, and then ultimately, how can we help? How can you help listeners? Wherever you might be. Many of our listeners are East Coast, Long Island, New York City based. Many are not. So, and the majority of the shows we do are certainly East Coast, New York based, but not always. So it's all about relationships, all about connecting. I call myself the nonprofit sector connector because that's what I'm all about. I've been connecting people my whole life, and now I get to do it with people who are literally changing the world. No offense to the financial world and stuff like that. I would spend every moment I can with the nonprofit sector. Hedge funds, great. I love hedge funds when they help out and support nonprofit organizations, right? We love that. But let's be honest, it's the folks in the nonprofit sector that are on the front lines doing the work. Elmcor is an organization that has been doing the work for 60 years. We're going to talk about that. We're going to talk about the history of the organization. But before we get into that, I want to meet my new friend. Hopefully you can call me a friend by 11 o'clock this morning. But we connected the night of the Queens Chamber of Commerce Business Person of the Year event. I'm very close. In fact, last night I was at an Asian American Bar Association event in Bayside, Queens. And our colleague Tom Gretsch and Brendan Levy, both of those guys from the Queens Chamber, were at this event in Bayside last night. So you were one of the honorees at the Queens Chamber Business Person of the Year, as was my buddy Brendan Levy. So that's how I came over to you and I was like, love your story. Would love you have you on my show, the whole thing. You get the whole Tommy D like crazed situation because I was just jazzed about meeting you and worked with your team to make this happen. So I'm excited that you're here. So I'm grateful for you. I know you said you were grateful for me. Let's get into it. Tell us about your journey. I always want to know, how does somebody get to the nonprofit sector? How did that start for you?
Yeah. So I guess my story or my journey is a big part of kind of who I am. I believe that, everyone's life is a story. And I come from a lot of storytellers. So I hope that I don't take too much time to talk about how I got here, but I think it's about who I am as a person is really how I got here. So my parents are both from Trinidad. And so immigrants who moved to New York, moved to Queens, originally into Corona, then into East Elmhurst. And um, I think like most people having an immigrant experience, right? They wanted to make sure that their children were connected and all of the things. But because of it and because of my Caribbean kind of culture, there was always this need to be a part of, right? Like community is a big thing for us. And so like always making sure that you had people who were technically not your aunts, but they're your aunts. And like so you like learn early how to not so much give back to be, but to be a part, right? And like and my parents also came out of the Black Power movement of the Caribbean as well. And so this kind of community um Bill's community concept, I think was just a part of my childhood. It didn't have a name. It surely didn't have a concept. It was just like, this is what we do. And so we were born here, my sister and I, and then they sent us to Trinidad for a few years, and then we came back. And so I've lived in East Elmhurst pretty much most of my life. And so the community itself is just a part of who I am. But the actual idea of nonprofit spaces, and it's the reason why here we kind of talk about the fact that Elmcor is a charitable designation, not a charity. And we say that specifically because charity was never built for the people it was actually ready to serve. It was built for the people providing the charity, right? First, it was your way into heaven. Then it became your tax break.
Yeah.
But, understanding that community knows what's best for community means that we organize. And so that's what Elmcor is. And so there's like this whole thing that resonated with me differently when I was here, because as we talk about like how I got here, I got to the space where I wanted to be a part of community, always building community from the idea that they know what's best, not outside entities, whether it's a funder or anyone telling you, you know what you need. And I got that from my family. I got that from my parents. I got it from my grandmother. I got it from my aunts, and my uncles. I got it from my sister. I got it from everyone around me. And now in the latest stages of my life, I get it from my friends. I get it from my family, my children, my husband, like everyone kind of helps me stay energized in the idea that we know what is best for
That's
us. And that is kind of like my nonprofit journey. I've worked in, it's funny to do radio and stuff. I've worked in entertainment because I started a nonprofit and I was like, they don't pay people enough for this. And so I ended up in the entertainment world for a few years, and then came back into the nonprofit space with a different mentality also about the business of nonprofits and understanding that it is a business. And you talked about hedge funds, and I loved when you said we love when they give us money, because one of the things that I always say too is you can't solve poverty with poverty. You can't want to do this work and think that it's okay to not have the money to do so, because a lot of the times the people working in this work too reflect their communities, right? And so if the community needs, then the staff needs. And so, we always try to promote it. And that's why we don't call it charity, right? It is the building of your own community, building of community, and ensuring that community can sustain itself. And so that's kind of who I am, I guess, and
Thank
how
you.
I got here.
I mean, this is like a master class right here because I'm so open on the show, so I'm just going to be totally open as usually. So I call the show Philanthropy in Focus. And I took a course at the Institute for Nonprofit Practice a couple of years back, and I met some incredible people. My friend Maheen Kaleem from Grantmakers for Girls of Color, my friend Michael Partis, who's over at the Red Hook Initiative, was on the show a couple of weeks ago. And I looked up the word philanthropy and then called my show Philanthropy in Focus way before there was a show. I went around talking about this for 2 years before it even happened, right? And then 100 so episodes into the thing, while I'm in sharing space with my colleagues at the Institute for Nonprofit Practice, I was like, man, I don't know if this is the right name for the show because this word philanthropy is a loaded word, right? You talked a little bit about why quote unquote charities were created, right? So maybe some folks could write big checks and feel good about themselves and maybe get their way into heaven and things like that, right? I think about my reflection in conversations with Maheen Kaleem, for example, and how the community, like you said, knows exactly what it needs and knows what's best. So, that that trust-based philanthropy, right? Like, don't question what we're doing, man. Give us the dough. Let us go do it. We know what we need to do here. Like, just, right? Give us the resources because we know what's needed. And there's so many thoughts that come up for me with this because I guess, I don't know from your perspective, but it's a loaded word. That word philanthropy has a lot of meanings. Now, if you go back to like the Greek, it means love and right and compassion, but that's not exactly what it means all the time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think what you're talking about is it's a lot. It's not the word is just loaded. The whole system is loaded. Right? So another reason and one of the ways that we approach the work and how I personally approach the work is we're an anti-racist organization. I'm an anti-racist, right? And I always say I'm a pre-George Floyd murder anti-racist, right? And I say that specifically,
Isn't it, this is not new, this whole thing, right?
yeah, and I say it specifically because after the murder of George Floyd in 2020, you saw a lot of organizations, including nonprofits, start saying that they were anti-racist and utilizing terms, but never really understanding that that means that you're taking a systemic kind of approach and attack on systems, not people,
Mhm.
right? And so for a lot of folks, they feel like, oh, anti-racism means that I'm not anti-Black, right? And so, I like Black people, I love Black folks, whatever. But it's so much deeper than that. It is looking at the systemic and institutional racism that has been a part of this for a long time. And we don't recognize race and racism as just about disliking folks, right? It's race plus prejudice plus power, right? And so the reason why you talk about language and why it's so important about philanthropy and why we're cognizant about it and why we say we're an anti-racist is because we know that we're here. We help people, right? We do. We help people, we help individuals, families, and community, but we're here to analyze and to assess and to make real conversations about the system that creates those types of situations, right?
Yeah.
Um, and so when you talk about philanthropy and the fact that you could go back and it could be love, words can also be perverted in a power structure in order to get those who in power what they need and give those who are not in power what they actually don't need. And so, language is a powerful thing. We're seeing that now all around this country. Interestingly, with like the concept of DEI, right? We saw that word be used post George Floyd murmur so much, and in less than what almost 5 years, it could be
Yeah.
wiped away, right? Language is a very important thing. This is why talk shows and having conversation, and I'm happy that we're just talking, is so helpful because language matters, right? I know you do a lot of anti-stigma work around mental health services and mental health work, but language matters,
Yeah.
right? And that's why it's important that you even analyze it, right? It doesn't mean always sometimes that you have to change the name of something, but at least you're conscious and you're having conversations about it. And I think that's important.
Yeah, yeah. Thank you for all that, and thank you for your candor, and thank you for calling out that piece about mental health, which is critically important to me, and we know about that. And if you like this episode enough, maybe you come on that show that I do, hashtag ending the stigma, which we do in studio, which would be a lot of fun because I know a big part of what Elmcor provides is behavioral health services, and I was looking at a lot of that. We'll get into that this morning. So much here. The Petey Green Project, I don't know if you're familiar with that organization, but they're coming on the show, I think in like 2 weeks and stuff like that. And that all comes out of somebody introducing me, a new friend of mine, Anna Erickson. We only know each other like 6 weeks, but she's very focused on social justice space. And she's like, Tommy D, I want to start to connect with people. And it's just like, it's all this is to me. It's all about connections and relationships and learning. And, there's just so much here. Saeeda, I'm really appreciative that you're here with me today. And I know folks are definitely plugging in and learning from this conversation. We got to take a quick break. We take literally 60 seconds. We come right back. We dive into it. When we come back, I want to get into Elmcor, the history of the organization, going back to, you mentioned the Black Power movement as it related to your family, but then as it relates to the organization, kind of the the genesis of this organization. Let's get into that and break it down. How's that sound?
Sounds great.
We're right back. Tommy D.
Are you a conscious co-creator? Are you on a quest to raise your vibration and your consciousness? I'm Sam Leibowitz, your conscious consultant, and on my show, The Conscious Consultant Hour, Awakening Humanity, we will touch upon all these topics and more. Listen live at our new time on Thursdays at 12 noon Eastern Time. That's The Conscious Consultant Hour, Awakening Humanity, Thursdays 12 noon on talkradio.nyc.
Are you a high-achieving, growth-oriented leader? Are you interested in developing your authentic leadership while creating a healthy, inclusive workplace? Hi, I'm Dr. Mira Brancu, host of The Hard Skills on talkradio.nyc at 5 p.m. Eastern on Tuesdays, where we discuss how leaders develop the hard skills needed to make a greater impact. We interview experts, have live coaching, and tackle these challenges. Listen to The Hard Skills on Tuesday at 5 p.m. Eastern on talkradio.nyc.
You're listening to Talk Radio NYC. Uplift, educate, empower.
Nonprofits need connections to move in good directions. So cut through all the static. Join Tommy in his attic.
Right, gang. Cut through the static. Join Tommy in his attic. Saeeda, when you were first talking about your background and stuff like that, you said, people who are not like biologically your aunts, but you treat them as that, and it's become like a community, right? I was hearing. So the guy who's singing that song is not really my uncle, but I call him Uncle Brendan because that's Uncle Brendan Levy from the Queens Chamber of Commerce. He's got a band called The Goods. They were called The Goods back in the 90s when they had a record deal, but since they're older men now, they call themselves Damaged Goods. So that's my Uncle Brendan right there singing. And we wrote the lyrics together, gang. I always say it was like a Lennon and McCartney thing, but Brendan's the one that sings the song. So I know a little bit about uncles who are not really my uncles. I want to get into something when we get a chance later on. Hopefully we can. When you said you left the industry for the sector for a little bit because you realized it doesn't pay well, that's probably a whole nother show we could do just about the disparity there of folks not being paid in this industry where they should be. I don't want to get off topic right now. What I want to just talk about is people for the people. First of all, you had the t-shirt on when we met the other day. I think you said there are not any hoodies. We should fix that. I love hoodies. By the way, this is Vanguard Benefits. That's our company, everybody, because employees matter. But I love wearing hoodies, and my new move is if I got a couple of hoodies made up with our brand logo, I could wear this all the time, and this is my new uniform for work is a hoodie. But I got to get some of that.
Like it too.
What? Say it again.
I'm sure our staff would like it too, because then it doesn't have to figure out what you're going to wear that day to work, right?
100%. That's how I feel. Like I go out with now like this is it. I could just be me, Tommy D, authentically. So I think I need one of these shirts at least for the t-shirts, people for the people. So we got to work that out. And I'm not asking for one. I get you a check. We'll do a transaction. So talk to me about this organization. Like I said, I started reading. It goes back. We talked about 1965. Comes out of civil rights era, right? So let's jump into that, please.
Yeah. So the organization started in 1965, right? So like we said, it's 60 years. This is also the 60th year of Malcolm X's assassination. And I say that because this community, East Elmhurst, was also the community that he lived in at the time of his death. And so it's, there's this clear indication of what New York was like, what this community was like, what was going on. And so in 1965 in the East Elmhurst Corona community, because that's what Elmcor stands for, right? It's East Elmhurst and Corona. And I have to say East Elmhurst because there's Elmhurst, that most people know Elmhurst, but they don't know that there's something called an East Elmhurst. Mm-hmm. And those folks of us who are from East Elmhurst, we get real territorial. And we're like, no, it's not Elmhurst. It's East Elmhurst.
That's Queens, though. That's how we are, Queens. Queens is neighborhood centric, man. Like I grew up in Belrose when I got married. Grew up in that. Excuse me. I was born for my first couple of years in Belrose, Queens, and then when I got married, I moved back to Glen Oaks, Belrose area, and we're very town focused. Like I think Brooklyn people say I'm from Brooklyn. You know, maybe they say Bed-Stuy, do or die, or something like that. But I feel like Queens is like, man, I'm from Corona, right? I'm from Jamaica, or like, you know what I'm saying about Queens?
I think it's a very New York thing.
Yeah.
I think we're so kind of homogeneous about our hoods that like it's just like we rep differently.
Very true.
But yeah, so Elmcor is East Elmhurst and Corona. That's where the name came from. And so it was the two communities that built the organization in 1965. And so People for the People kind of was a term that really came out of the substance use treatment and prevention work that was happening within Elmcor. But Elmcor started originally with baseball. And so a lot of folks know the organization from a sports perspective now from basketball without recognizing that in 65 they opened with baseball. And Cecil Watkins, who was one of the founders, really was working for Parks Department and was like, let's do recreation because specifically young Black boys in the community were, kind of fallen victim to violence and heroin use at the time and things of that nature. And so the community itself said, you know what, we're going to provide our own services. There was no why, there was nothing happening out here. We'll use the parks, we'll use what we have, but we'll build something for our young people to kind of have an alternative to quote unquote gang violence at the time and things like that. And the reason why I started with baseball is as much as we watch basketball now and we feel like it is the Black sport in our heads,
Yep.
the reality of it is baseball was the first sport that young Black boys could see themselves, playing professionally because the crossover happened there first, right? Yeah. And so Jackie Robinson, all of that stuff was and so baseball was a sport that young Black boys played. And a few months later, they started doing basketball. A little while after that, they started to do drug treatment on their own, right? This is before there was licenses and funds and, it was a storefront and people who were actually recovering from substance use disorders kind of just was doing the treatment itself for people in the community.
So they didn't have, they weren't quote unquote certified. They didn't have a background in it. That was like, but that was like, I guess, beginning of the peer advocate, right? Like I just did what you're doing. Where, right where I am, you will be, where you are, I once was, that sort of shit. Right on,
There was no licenses, no, like none of that stuff. It was like, what are you going to do to get the folks in your community healthy and work on their wellness? And so it was a very different approach. On 101st and Northern Boulevard was a very large Black Panther chapter. And so many of the people who were a part of the genesis of this organization were young 17, 18-year-old Panthers who wanted to uplift their community. And they were working with older folks like Otley Brownbill and Cecil Watkins and Lou Benson. And there were all of these older folks. Our assemblyman who just retired from this area, Jeffrey on Aubrey, was the executive director here in the 80s, was the educational director in the 70s. We just got, shout out to my group, my comms team, Michael Franklin team. We finally yesterday were able to see a video that Leanna Lee, who's our chief program officer, who's been here for decades, had been telling me about, like a short film that Elmcor had done back in the day called 30 Minutes from Harlem. And we couldn't find it. And we found it last year in the African American Smithsonian in DC, and we couldn't get a copy. And yesterday, my comms team was actually able to get a copy of it. We will be showing it.
What are you going to do? You're gonna make a big, like a showing somewhere in a theater?
Well, yeah, we're definitely gonna do that. We're actually trying to do a documentary because the history here in this neighborhood, in this organization, is so rich. The first Black Queensborough president, Helen Marshall, is an Elmcor alum. She's a part of the folks who helped found Elmcor in the community, worked at Elmcor at some point through Manpower. Like just a lot of rich history that is not just known, but the organization started people for the people, right? Like literally, we know what's wrong, we know what's going on, and we know how to help. So before before there was, violence interruption programs in the way that we see them now, Elmcor had been doing it. Before there was drug treatment programs in the way that we see them now, Elmcor had been doing it. Elmcor had been doing food programs, free breakfast was being done at Elmcor, childcare was being done at Elmcor. All of those things were happening. Our older adult center is the one that you saw from 1981. That was what that date was. This is prior to there being an office of the aging at the city, right? We were doing older adult clubs without the funding. All of the stuff that Elmcor had been doing was happening without funding. They purchased the properties on Northern Boulevard to gut it out themselves. Like when you see this documentary and you see them literally building their own drug treatment program, right? Like by hand, in their community members doing this. Like that is the history of this organization. And so for us, we know it is worthy because most nonprofits, especially those started by Black and brown people in the 60s, do not still exist now, right? But Elmcor has been able to withstand time.
Yeah. So first of all, thank you for, I love the stories. And that's what I love about doing this show is to be able to have those stories and be able to tell those stories. And just the longevity and the sustainability of the organization, like you're talking about, is so important to shine that light on. And as you're telling the story, like I see in my mind, I like to like see the vision, right? So like I see the folks doing the work and getting it together. And it just goes back to, what it is there, people for the people, but it just goes back to the community knows how to hook up and sort out what they need, right? Like maybe this is the wrong word, but maybe we don't need the interlopers to come in. Like we got this thing, but like, but there has not been given the same resources, right?
I'm sorry. I have to make a joke. It's so inappropriate, but myself, because you said that we don't need the interlopers. My kids will hate this. So my husband, I know you have children as well. I have adult children. I don't know how old your kids are, but
not adults yet.
When my adult children come home, he'll call me and be like, the interlopers here. So
your husband says it? They say that about themselves.
No, my husband, he'll call me and he'll be like, the interlopers are here. So when you said that,
is that kind of like a sign? Be like, Saeeda, maybe you don't want to come home. Maybe you just stay there. Don't come. There's a bunch of interlopers. Thank you for making light of the whole thing because I was probably getting a little too heavy anyway. But it's like that sort of thing. It goes to that word philanthropy for me again. And it's like, no. We know what we need. But you and I and many of the folks who are on the open-minded and awareness side of things know that things were not fair and were not set up. Gang, if you don't believe that, please. I hate to say this, but don't even come back to the show because you don't get what this is. If we're still arguing about that stuff, I don't know, man. I can't even be. Maybe that's small-minded of me.
It's not that it's small-minded, but the reality is we had an entire change in administration federally that says a lot of people don't believe that. So
they don't, and that's the thing, and it's one of these things like. I don't want to. This is going to sound so immature. You can't change stupid, but like you can't, like I don't know, man. Point of the matter is, this thing was not set up equally, gang. Period. End of story. Right. So I'm on a rant here. I'm trying to pull it back. Saeeda, the fact that the community knows and can do this work and has done this work is critically important. However, then there is here's where I got to go because this is like full arc for me. We start this off. I mentioned hedge funds. I don't know why that came out, right? I need to ask you, as somebody who grew up in East Elmhurst, and you tell me this organization it started out with baseball. You gotta tell me that you root for the Metsies, and a lot of the Elmcor folks are Mets fans. You can't. Please don't tell me you're a Yankee fan, because I don't know what's gonna stop. Don't make that face for real. How?
A long story.
Are you a Yankee fan?
I am.
My goodness, folks, it was great. We'll be back next week. See you all. I'm just kidding.
But I am a true lover of the Mets and and what they're able to do, not just as a baseball team, but as an organization. And the new leadership there at that stadium has transformed a lot in our community that we didn't have that relationship before. And so because of it, they are making me a Mets lover. I'll always be a Yankees fanatic. I
Well,
can't
my
help
buddy,
myself.
I know my friend Mick Collins is listening. He was named after Mickey Mantle. I give Mick a hard time all the time, but Mick actually is with a company called Pay It Forward Processing. They're a merchant processing company I've done some work with. They do credit card processing and they give back a portion of their the proceeds back to nonprofit organizations. So I always like to give Mick a plug, especially when the Mets and Yankees conversation come up. But what I wanted to say real quick about that too is, Uncle Steve, we call him, although he's really not my uncle. I don't even know Steve Cohen, but the gang at the Queen's Chamber knows him. But him and Alex, and I met their son Josh a couple of weeks ago. That's a whole nother story that'll take us on a tangent. But Mick Collins, checking in on YouTube. Yes, go Yankees. There it is. Thanks, Mick. I knew you were out there. I met Josh Cohen a couple of weeks ago at an event, like right before the new year, and they're so philanthropic. They're so involved in the community and things like that. And that is, some of the good folks in that hedge fund world, as I sort of called out, that are doing the work, that are doing the give back. And being a Met fan right now, it's pretty exciting to be a Met fan with the activity that's going on.
It is.
Yeah, there's a lot of
as you guys stole our guy. Yeah.
see, we stole like it was a robbery, like we just went up there and picked them up and kidnapped them from from the cathedral up there in the Bronx. Sure, that's what happened, Miss Dunston. We gotta take a quick break. I love talking with you. I really like breaking it down and having this conversation. I agree with you. These are important dialogues that must continue to happen on a regular basis. We'll take a quick break, although I probably overextended this segment, which is part of the show. We always run out of time. We never run out of words. Saeeda Dunston, Tommy D, Philanthropy and Focus, right back after this break.
Hey everybody, it's Tommy D, the nonprofit sector connector, coming at you from my attic. Each week here on talkradio.nyc, I host a program, Philanthropy and Focus. Nonprofits impact us each and every day, and it's my focus to help them amplify their message and tell their story. Listen each week at 10 a.m. Eastern Standard Time until 11 a.m. Eastern Standard Time, right here on talkradio.nyc.
Hi, I'm Linda Marcanico. The A Train to Sedona is a memoir about my journey to love and compassion. It's also the name of my new broadcast on Wednesdays at 12 noon. When we are spiritual, we embrace possibilities and ideas, which strengthen our mind, body, spirit, health, and wisdom. On the A Train to Sedona broadcast, I plan to interview guests who embrace these expansive practices. Join us on Wednesdays at 12 noon on Talk Radio New York City.
You're listening to Talk Radio NYC at www.talkradio.nyc. Now broadcasting 24 hours a day.
Nonprofits need connections to move in good directions. So cut through all the static. Join Tommy in his attic.
I saw you bopping a little bit, Saeed. I think you're starting to dig the song. I think you're digging it, man. It's funny, on my other two shows on well, there's three actually, but the one, Ending the Stigma Together and the new show Long Island Changemakers, I got these reggae tunes to like kind of chill out because that's kind of where I resonate on that frequency. So I'm glad to have you here. I'm glad we're really breaking it down, having this conversation. As I look at the website too, behavioral health services, let's go there real quick if we could, because you know what? I'm on this mission. I almost wore one of those hashtag Ending the Stigma t-shirts. Shout out to Fred Taffer and Erico Taffer who put that together, the logos for me. Shout out to the team at North Shore TV for giving me a platform. We've done 7 episodes. I haven't put any of them out there yet, but we've done 7 episodes of hashtag Ending the Stigma. So let's talk about that, because we don't talk about it enough is my contention. So tell me about how you see the world through the organization and other things.
Yeah, so I want to say Elmcor is a part of that, hopefully the movement to end stigma around behavioral health or mental health, substance use disorders, literally just chronic health conditions of the brain. One of the things that we find so interesting is the stigma that revolves around health conditions about the one organ in your body that is the mainframe for everything. Right? And there's no stigma about heart disease. There's no stigma about liver disease. But this one part that literally keeps everything moving is the one part that we want to stigmatize because it does control how people outwardly behave, right? And so because of that, we come from this place, but it's because we moralize a lot of these things, right? We talk about stigma as if it's a separate thing, but it's the moralizing of society, of what we do in society, right? We moralize people's behavior. We tell them what's right and wrong. We tell them what they should and shouldn't do. We ultimately take away people's agency without knowledge. It's just so customary and normal and normalized to take people's identity away, that we've gotten to the point where we don't recognize that the things that make me who I am are the things that you're judging, right? And so it's it's an interesting thing. It is something we have to really, and that's why, I said as anti-racist, we don't look at individuals, we look at systems. That is a societal issue. That is a systemic issue. So, I could feel like people with mental health disorders, or that people with a substance use disorder, that it is a health condition. But that doesn't mean everyone believes that, because society has had generations and centuries of a belief process that's going to take us a lot of time to deconstruct. The good thing, and the reason why we say we do anti-stigma work, anti-racist work, all that stuff, is because anything that was constructed can be deconstructed, right? So we know that these are constructs. We know that the constructs of understanding the mind is a particular way. And so we can deconstruct these things. We just have to be able to do that. For us right now, we're also really pushing, as I said, the organization came out of the heroin epidemic in 1965, and now in 2025, 60 years later, Black men over the age of 55 are dying at 5 times the rate of their white counterparts from overdose. And for us, that should be like, and so thank you, Tommy, for allowing us on. We take any opportunity at any medium at any time to have this conversation, because no one is talking about it. And we talk about fentanyl, we talk about overdose, but I would just be very honest and transparent. But about 7-8 years ago, when, and I'm happy a lot of your listeners are from Long Island and from Queens, but when young white men were dying in Long Island and Staten Island and all of those places, I couldn't see enough of it on TV, right? Like, it was everywhere. There was wonderful town halls that were done in media, and real conversations, and it was no longer criminalized. It was seen as a health issue that needed some help. But we have a public health crisis right now with Black and brown people dying at astronomical rates. And we're happy that our white brothers and sisters are seeing a decline in those overdoses in those communities. But we need the same level of resounding noise, because there's something, to me, super sad of a Black man dying at 57 and 58 from an overdose. Typically, people who have chronic health conditions, who've had this chronic substance use disorder for decades, which means, it sounds terrible, but it's true. I'm a harm reductionist as well. So I speak about drug use like I love people who use drugs, right? Like I don't talk about them not any differently than I talk about anyone else. And so, like anything, if I've been using that long, I know how to use, right? Like I literally know how to use to not die. And so if I've made it to 50 something years old and now I'm dying from something I know how to do, we know that there's something wrong. We know that the supply is tainted. We know that this is not a choice. We know that this is something that needs this level of noise. And so for us right now, a part of our behavioral health crusade is to just say we have to talk about this. We don't want to be distracted with conversations about tariffs, and we don't want to be distracted because Black people are dying, brown folks are dying, our Indigenous people, brothers and sisters, are dying at higher rates, and we need to. 60 years later, we're having the same conversation, and people are dying, and so anti-stigma work is as we say, is saying that these are your people, and we gotta love them, right? We have to love people who use drugs. We have to,
Yeah.
you know.
Yeah, thank you for all that. And I have questions about it, but I just want to make a statement really quick too, because I share this a lot. So I'm sober now 14 years, everybody, and I tell you that not for the accolades and the applause and all that stuff, but I say it because, it's work and it's work and it's work. And it's work every day, man. So, and you talk about harm reduction, and you talk about people who've used for years. We talk about wordplay, you and I a little bit. And overdose, these folks were poisoned, right? Like, this is not you said, like, these are users, and again, you and I think see the world through a lens of compassion and love for people versus like that person's a junkie, which somebody else might say, right? So
Yeah,
right,
we eliminate that kind of language
right,
because
but
it
you know
just.
what I'm saying.
Oh no, I get it. And that's what I'm saying. We eliminate that language because it allows you. Just think about the word junkie, right? It's junk. It's
It's
garbage. You can throw.
dismissive. It's dismissive. I
You
don't have
throw it. You can literally throw it away, and that's why I said we love our people, right? Like we don't throw our people away,
I,
right? Like we just.
yeah. Words have meaning, and you can dismiss that if that's how you treat somebody, right? Versus we look into somebody and say, well, I love you, I see where you're at, let me try and see where we could be supportive. So it's a bigger thing than somebody took too much one day. It's a matter of fact that they were poisoned, right? And that's really it. How do you see, I mean, I think the biggest thing is education, but like, how do you see us getting the word out, so to speak, and how can we help here?
Yeah. So one things like this, and I would even say conversations in your kitchen, in your sports clubs, and whatever it is, we need to talk about it. Like just we need to talk about it, and that's anti-stigma work is actually the same way we normalized um, the same way we normalize judging folks for their use or judging people because they were sad. Depression is depression, right? Or judging people because they hear voices or whatever. The same way we did that, we can do the opposite. We can have conversations about all these things from a very compassionate way. But I do want to talk a little bit about what Elmcor is doing, just boots on the ground to
Yeah.
kind of address these issues. So one of the things that we have is a 35-foot mobile treatment unit that goes anywhere throughout the borough of Queens and actually does drug treatment work in community. And we go to communities that most people don't see as a high use community, but we know that in the hidden parts of all communities, that's our unit right there.
I'm
That there's
watching. Sorry to interrupt you, Said. I'm sharing the is it a bus? It's like an RV, right?
Yeah, it's a 35-foot. Yeah, a huge piece. It's got counseling rooms in there. It's got an exam room in the back. We have peers that ride on here. We have a nurse practitioner that's able to actually do inductions for medication assisted treatment in community. We have a counselor that's able to do that, and we work with people who are actively using at the time in the community. We do a lot of Narcan trainings. We make sure that, and then we do prevention work as well, right? We always talk about treatment, but we do a lot of prevention work. We push into the schools throughout Queens. We have the only youth recovery clubhouse in the borough of Queens, which means young people who identify as being in recovery or quote unquote at use of using substances, which means every young person gets to come into our building in a drop-in center style, and they're able to come and hang out. We are going to be opening our expanding, I should say, our outpatient services to be able to do methadone. There is not enough medication-assisted treatment throughout this borough specifically. And so we're excited to be able to do as much as we can. We opened our very first supportive and affordable housing project. We're super proud of ourselves for that, but more proud of the fact that the way that we built that building, we have people who have mental health or substance use disorders, chronically homeless, in the same building with older adults, right? Because we believe if you keep community together, they will recover from all things, because we're all in recovery from something. And that's a part of the destigmatizing the idea of language. Recovery is not for people with substance use disorders. Recovery is for all of us, because we're all recovering from something.
There's some trauma for sure. We've all experienced some trauma, and it's all relative to you as an individual. Everybody know that, and if you are, we did some shows, and 988 is the number. If you come to the show and somehow you need support, 988. Help is there. That's the suicide and crisis lifeline. Call that number. I just wanted to put that out there. I felt like the moment was appropriate to do that. So I want to get to one more thing before we go to a quick break. You had mentioned, and I interrupted you there, but you get into communities that maybe, my words, but like maybe on the surface wouldn't look like they're affected by substance abuse and things like that. Talk about that real quick if you could.
Yeah, sure. One of the neighborhoods, and I hope no one gets mad at me, but one of the communities that we take the mobile unit to in the past and have been is an area in Queens, Bayside, right? Bayside is not Corona, right? Like people used to, I will date myself a bit. I remember when Northern Boulevard was called Cocaine Way, as many people in Queens who could remember that. And so there was this concept and this idea that, this is where you came to cop drugs and to use it. Mm-hmm. But the reason why it was considered that was because it cut through Queens in such a way that you could get to every place in the city. It wasn't just Queens. And so there's parts of Queens where there is substance use, but it's very hidden. And sometimes we know the spots where folks are under the trestle, the areas that we don't want to act as if we know our people are there, but they're our people, right? Our people, our human family is somewhere. And so we take this unit and we go to those spaces, and then we go to spaces that everybody knows, right? There's a triangle right across from Jamaica Hospital. We're there. Everyone knows that's a high use space, but we go to where people are. We go to the Rockaways because Far Rockaway is far. And many people don't want to go onto the peninsula, but we will go.
And there's limited resources down there, as far as services, down on the peninsula. So we know that. And this is one of the reasons why you'll probably say your organization were honored at the Queens Chamber of Commerce event a couple months back, is because you're doing this important work in community. We do have to take a quick break because I've overextended us again. This is part of the show, but we take a quick break. I would just want one thing before we take a break. I did mention earlier, I was in Bayside last night. I'm on the board of the Bayside Business Association. My business partner, Ed Probst, is the president of the Bayside Business Association. In fact, that's how I met Vanguard many, many years ago, 20 years ago. In fact, 22 years ago, as I look at the calendar. If there's support we can bring with the BBA, the Bayside Business Association, to Elmcor, we'll collaborate offline. When we come back, I just want to talk about what's upcoming for the organization, how we can impact, how we can collaborate, what we could bring. I say we, I mean people who don't know you yet and now do, that sort of thing. How's that sound?
Sounds great.
We will be right back. Philanthropy in Focus.
Were you an essential worker during the pandemic? If you needed to learn stages of epilepsy, did you depend on advocates? Did you use new innovations to cope with mental and neurological issues? Maintaining high quality of life and keeping good mental health are what we all strive for. I'm Frank R. Harrison, host of Frank About Health, and each week top healthcare influencers, professionals, and innovators answer these questions and more. Stay tuned on Thursdays at 5 p.m. on talkradio.nyc, and I will continue to be frank about health with all of you.
Are you a conscious co-creator? Are you on a quest to raise your vibration and your consciousness? I'm Sam Leibowitz, your conscious consultant, and on my show, The Conscious Consultant Hour, Awakening Humanity, we will touch upon all these topics and more. Listen live at our new time on Thursdays at 12 noon Eastern Time. That's The Conscious Consultant Hour, Awakening Humanity, Thursdays 12 noon on talkradio.nyc.
You're listening to Talk Radio NYC at www.talkradio.nyc. Now broadcasting 24 hours a day.
Nonprofits need connections to move in good directions. So cut through all the static. Join Tommy in his attic.
This is my favorite part of my week. I get to feature a nonprofit organization, tell their story. And then this part of the show is like when I get to live out my dream. Saeeda Dunston, you probably don't know, but when I was a little boy, I didn't want to be an astronaut. I didn't want to be a fireman. I wanted to be a game show host. So this is the lightning round, baby. This is the lightning round. We're going to get right after it. We're going to get to it. What can we tell people about? How can we help? Who do you want to meet? Who's a good collaborator? Like, I'm sitting here thinking Dr. Larry Grubler from TSI. I think we talked about him the other day. Very good friend of mine. Venture House, they're a client of mine. We do the benefits for their employees. You're familiar with Venture House? Yeah, right?
Yes, I am.
So these are the kind of folks that I hang with already. So how can we help? What's upcoming? Talk about the gala. This is your time to tell me what's up.
Yeah. So thanks, Tommy. And one of the things I do want to say, I know that we talked a lot about me, the history, and then about behavioral health services, but I want to kind of talk about the breadth of the organization. Just in case you're listening and you're like, yeah, well, you know, substance use, behavioral health services, mental health. Okay, fine. Yeah, great history. Wonderful. She might be kind of cool. But the thing about it is, I want to also say is that we're a lifespan organization. So we work with people as little as 3 and as old as 103. So if you haven't quite seen where you fit in yet, or how you can support, or where you see the connection, Tommy, as you talk about being a connector, if you can't see the connection, we have 4 older adult centers in Corona, in Jackson Heights, in Left Rock, in East Elmhurst. So we work with our older adults, making sure that they get congregate meals, that we go meet those who are homebound, that we're connecting. So if you're a person and feels like you want to support people doing older adult work, that's us. If you're a person who loves youth services and you're like, you know, I really like young people, we have a 3K, 4K preschool in Jamaica. So if you're from South Queens and you're hearing all this North Queens stuff and you're saying, yeah, not really for me, don't worry, we got you too. So we have a 3K, 4K in Jamaica where we work with our really young people. We were so excited to bring preschool back. It was a part of the genesis of the organization. We hadn't done it for some time. I was really excited to be able to help future change leaders, right? Like for us, we're creating change agents. We're not just providing schooling. And so hence why the name of the preschool is Rising Scholars, right? We're helping them rise into their future positive, excellent spaces. And so we have preschools, and as I said, we push into the schools, whether it's public, private. We push into schools to do prevention work. We have the Youth Recovery Clubhouse. I did talk about the fact that we started with sports. We have a basketball at AAU, very competitive basketball AAU team. We also have a softball team for young women. Women in sports is very big right now. It was one of the things I wanted to make sure when I came here 10 years ago that we kind of did, because Elmcor did a great job with sports with young men. But as a girl who played basketball, didn't feel like they did a great job with me when I was growing up. And so it was one of the things that we worked on. You talked earlier about the philanthropy and the giving of the Mets. They support our girl sports programs, and they've been very supportive to the organization. And so don't worry. Before I leave here, me and Elmcor probably would be a full-on Mets fan, especially if we're able to get the great economic engine that they're vying for right now across the finish line. It will really do a lot for our community. And so there's all of this stuff that we do, and I said there's housing. We're running shelters. So there's a lot of things for people to feel connected to us with. So don't worry if you didn't hear something. I promise you will feel connected to something here, and so that means that there's something here to support.
I love that. Let me jump in and just say, or ELMCOR, ELMCOR.org for more info. Please say to continue.
Yes, definitely. And so we do have a gala coming up April 25th. I hope I got the number right. But I did?
You did. April 25th. April 25th.
Yeah, I got it right. Thank you.
4/25/25.
Oh, see, look at you helping me out.
Quickly.
So we have our upcoming gala. It's the 25th, it'd be our 60th anniversary. It's going to be wonderful. We are recognizing Lorraine Chambers, who is the executive director of Northwell Forest Hills. Maria Ferrero, who is the bank manager here for TD Bank. We are also recognizing Elwanda Young, who was a nonprofit, I don't even know, like a goddess. She was originally the nonprofit, the leader here in the 80s, and went on to United Way, New York City, for about 40 years. And we're honoring some more folks, but I'm mentioning all of these people because, once again, you can see the connection between healthcare, between nonprofit spaces, between banking.
Yes.
We are here to make sure that we are supporting those who support us. And so there are many ways you can go. As Tommy said, www.elmcor.org. If you want to support, as I said, you cannot solve poverty with poverty. And 60 years is a long time, and things are going to be tough for us, those of us who are heavily government funded, receiving money, and we see what's happening on the federal level. And we know it doesn't just impact direct federal contracts. People are misunderstanding. State contracts are backed by federal dollars. City contracts are backed by federal dollars. And so now is when we're going to need our business community, our corporate partners, to step up. And so I take this moment for all of those in Long Island and Queens and who are listening, and nationally, do not think that today is the time to pull off the levers of support. It's time to actually increase. So, and you can always just come out. And I know you gave the 988 number. I also want to give our 800 24-hour hotline number as well. 800-950-4271, 1-800-950-4271. And our regular number is 718-651-0096. We're on the corner of 108th and Northern Boulevard. We're easily identifiable. We have the whole corner. Find us.
Tour, and I'm coming out for a tour because we already talked about that. I'll probably bring my guy Dylan DeMarco Cruz. We're bringing camera. You and I. You take me on a tour. We'll make a whole show out.
We got boxing rings. We got.
All right, no, I'm not a boxer. I'm not a boxer. I might be like a good corner man, but I'm not a boxer. I'm an old dude at this point.
We have all the things.
Listen, I appreciate you. I appreciate you coming on the show. Thank you for everything you're doing. Thank you for just dropping so much knowledge, certainly about your organization, but general knowledge about life and humanity and systematic change that we got to work on together. And I usually make a heart like a weird way, but people do it like this way. But I'm just going to give out some love right now because I say this: love, compassion, right? Listening more than you're talking. Listen, hear the other person, right? Pour into people. Saeeda Dunston, I'm happy to have known you now, and I look forward to coming out and visiting with you. Thanks for being here.
Thank you, Tommy. We appreciate you here at Elmcor.
You got it. Make it a great day, everybody. I'll be back here next week, right in my attic. I'll wait for you. Meet me here. See you later. Bye.
Nonprofits need connections to move in good directions. So cut through all the static. Join Tommy in his attic.